How did you get to New York City?
I moved in 2016. First time. I'm here on my second round because during COVID, I moved back home to Israel. I just found myself there for a few years. I thought it's going to be like a month. I lived in New York when COVID started, and I was like, it's probably gonna be, let's buy a round trip for a month. It's gonna be over in a month. And then I found myself there for 4 years. But basically, I knew I want to move to New York since I was probably 15, 16 when I started taking jazz more seriously. And it was kind of clear that New York is the place to be if you wanted to aim to the highest summit, playing jazz. And so I knew I want to come here, and eventually I moved when I was 22 in 2016.
Was music always a part of your life and your upbringing?
Yes. My parents are musicians. My sister is a musician too. We're 4 people. And my dad is a drummer. I'm a drummer as well. So it's kind of, in a way, chose me. I did not have a way out. It was just pretty clear that I was attracted to music since I was very young, and my parents, of course, supported it, and I fell in love with the drums pretty quickly, like between 2 and 3 years old.
Wow!
Already, they used to put me on a chair, give me sticks, and I would start banging the drums, and at some point, play time and simple stuff, and it just was at home since I was born. So. And not only the instruments, also like great music, like just the musical environment was very rich and supporting. So I just kind of was born into it.
When you say it chose you, do you have a conscious memory of that sensation?
That's interesting. I mean, it was kind of a joke, but if I'm thinking about it. Not really, but when I look at pictures or videos, there is a lot of documentation of like early moments, because my parents will always document things. They were those type of parents that like consciously bought a camera, like a video camera. In the 90s, it was, there were cameras, but it wasn't like today, iPhones and stuff. Like you would have to buy cassettes and turn it on. It was like a big thing, and they will always like when something magical has happened, they will always just take out the camera and document it. So there are a lot of videos that I've seen later that kind of connect to some kind of memory of mine. But I can remember like a specific time that I was conscious about like, wow, music chose me. I was just always super passionate about it, and I would just love to play with records and to play all sorts of instruments, and it was just a part of everyday life. So I guess those type of realizations came maybe later in my life, where I just realized that it's so amazing that I can do this for a living and make money out of it and still stay passionate about what I'm doing.
And fundamentally, it choosing you is related to your love of the art and the love of the work and the practice in general?
I guess so. I mean, I'm trying to understand the question better. Like, I guess it just came so naturally that in a way I never asked myself, what else do I want to do? And if I do ask the question of like, what if God forbid something happened to me and I couldn't play music, that scares me so much that I don't even deal with actually digging in with the answer. It's just such a maybe I'm saying it chose me because it's just I never asked myself if I want to do anything else. And there are times, when you connect your passion with your profession, there are times where things can get hard, and you like when you're not in the mode of like, oh my God, this is so amazing, I'm so grateful that I can do that. Everyday life, you have your own like troubles, even within the privilege of being a working musician and making money out of it and living off of it. There are moments that I like less or more, but it's just it's really great. I'm trying to be really grateful and remind myself that it's not normal
Yes.
for most people to live off of art, and more than that, it's a privilege that I can share. That my privilege is that I'm doing the art at my highest possible form. Like there are people who do music for a living, but they don't like the music they do, but they do this type of music just because they need money. If it's like musical situations that are not musically fulfilling, but they're musicians, so it still pays more than the everyday normal job. But I can share that I'm privileged enough to really do great music and be fulfilled by it. So I try to be as grateful as possible, even if I have moments that I'm like, I'm tired today, I don't want to go to this rehearsal, or I don't want to drive that far to play that gig. Generally, like I try to always bring myself back to reality and remember that's a really great position to be.
Well said.
Yeah.
I want to get into your progression in your training in Israel.
Yeah.
We were talking before we were recording about your family story.
Yeah.
How did your family get to Israel in the first place? Was it your grandparents, your parents? What's the story there?
So if we start at my grandparents' generation, then my grandparents on my mom's side came to Israel before it was established from Yemen. In I think 43. For Israel was established in 48, so they came in 43, and my dad's parents came in the 50s from India.
India.
Yes. Not many people know, but there is a Jewish community in India. They specifically came from the south, which is, at the time, there were only like 2,000 Jewish people in that community in the south, in a area called Kerala. The city is called Kochi. I've never been there. It's one of my dreams to just go and visit. There's still a synagogue somewhere there, and just a few Jewish people left. But generally, my parents they were born in Israel, and they didn't. Their situation wasn't like mine. They weren't born into musical families, so they discovered their passion for music in a different way, and they met probably in Tel Aviv in their 20s. And my story, as I said before, me and my sister were born into a musical family, so the story was different. But my mom is a singer, and also she used to act in like musicals. She's a comedian. In the 90s, when I was a kid, she had a comedy show, like a stand-up and sketches and like impressions and stuff. So she was always like, like a stage person, super funny, super like, both my parents are really funny and very nice people and super easygoing and positive, optimistic, which is a great privilege. Yeah. And my dad, he used to also play drums for musicals and with some pop artists. And he didn't come from jazz. Me and my sister, like my sister is older than me, and she was the first one to go to that high school we were talking about before, Telma Yalin High School for Arts. And as a kid, she would take me once a year. I was maybe, 10 or 11 or 12. She would take me once a year to see the jazz, just a normal jazz day. Like every week there will be like, you'll play, like if you're in the jazz major, you will just play with some ensembles and stuff. And she would take me, I was still in elementary school, but she would just take me and I will hang out with the high school musicians. And I was already drumming. I was very young, but I was really passionate about drums and music. And I remember just the thoughts about like, I can't wait to go to that high school already, because it seemed like, I know that there's this movie, it's called Fame, that is around, it's about like like musical high school or like high school for arts. It's kind of like the same thing, you know. You just see so many young artists, and as a kid I was totally blown away by the fact that there are dancers and classical artists, classical musicians, jazz musicians, visual artists, cinema, you know, actors, and I always wanted to go there. And so when I was 14, I auditioned and then got accepted to the school. So this is kind of the moment where I started to get into jazz. But before that, when I was younger, I was kind of an alien. I was this kind of, I don't know if it's weird to say about myself. I was kind of this prodigy kid playing drums, but I didn't have anybody to play with, because in my elementary school, I was, you know, this talented kid, but nobody else was a musician. And then when I got to this high school, suddenly I had people to play with, which was super cool. And this is pretty much the background of like my parents and where I grew up. And there was always appreciation for art in my house. And yeah, it's a great privilege being born into a musical family, because first of all, you don't have, you know, the resistance of parents for you being a musician. You know, there are a lot of parents saying like, this is not an occupation, you should go to like college, learn, like study law, or
get a real job.
Get a real job, exactly. And on top of that, specifically with drums, I know about a lot of friends, musician friends of mine, that wanted to play drums, but their parents were like, no, it's too loud, you should pick a different instrument. So I was privileged, like, you know, on both ends, you know, both with like being supported by my parents choosing to be a musician, and like, you know, I had a drum set at home already. So naturally I just played, and thankfully most of the neighbors were cool with it. There were some issues at some point, but you know, thankfully my path of being a drummer since I was young was relatively, like, there was no resistance to it. Like it was pretty easy, and it was very well supported by my family, which is pretty cool. I can say I'm very privileged to have been born to that situation.
You said, so there's the Indian side, and then there's the Yemeni side.
Yes.
Is there a similarly tiny community in Yemen of a Jewish diaspora? Do you know anything about that move from Yemen to Israel?
So currently, I don't think, I can't say specific numbers, but I don't think there are any Jewish people left in Yemen because of persecution. In India, it's different, because there wasn't hostility towards Jewish people. I mean, it has to do also with the religions that running the countries. You know, India is a much more probably diverse place in terms of religion, and I think India is much more Yemen is much more Muslim. And there are some, Muslim countries that are tolerant towards Jews, but I'm not sure about Yemen. But I don't know anything about it. I would say probably there aren't many Jewish people in Yemen left, and there are some more in India. I wish I could go to Yemen. I don't think I can go there with my Israeli passport. I know the situation is crazy there either way. I'm not sure what's going on, but I don't have too much knowledge about what's going on right now with Jewish people in Yemen. But Yemenite Jewish culture is interesting in terms of food, in terms of like there is a very rich culture, and you know, like if only the musical style of like Yemeni Jewish music is very beautiful, and it's just bringing out colors, very, very unique colors from both the Jewish aspect of it and the Yemeni aspect of it, which I totally recommend to check out. I wasn't growing up that much listening to like Jewish Yemeni music, because I grew up as an Israeli and not as I wasn't very connected to my Jewish identity in terms of like rules and you know, keeping Judaism in terms of like, you know, following religion, but it's a beautiful thing. I mean, I mostly know music and food. Coming from like Jewish Yemeni and also Jewish Indian culture, mainly the way they sing from the Bible, the way they interpret the just the, you know, the like Jewish rules and it's just it's interesting to see the Indian versus Yemenite. Like if you follow the same rules, like how each of the cultures follow, like what they follow, how they sing those melodies, what type of food they prepare for the same holidays.
Yeah.
It's just cool. But I can't say I know it very, very well. Just, you know, a little bit that my mom used to cook or play at home. But as I grow older, I get more interested. Like I get more connected to my roots and kind of like I understand that also my parents are not going to be always around to show me things or tell me stories about their parents and about their childhood. So I'm more keen to kind of explore and, you know, get closer to that.
Yeah. Well said.
Yeah.
I want to go back to your high school.
Yeah.
And I would imagine, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe showing up at that high school, finding people who can kind of play on your level is almost like finding people who can speak your language for the first time.
Yeah.
And there's a connectedness that can come with that. I'd love to give you a chance to talk about the high school in any detail you would like of what it represents in Israel. I don't know if it's kind of the destination high school for music and the arts in the country, but I'd love to hear about your thoughts on the high school and just what it was like to go there.
Yeah. So as I said, I came from a pretty like isolated environment in terms of music. I didn't have anybody to play with when I was younger, so I would play with like -1 tracks or with records. Or I remember trying to form a band with like some people from my elementary school, but they were like they knew they didn't even know how to play chords, so it was kind of like, you know, trying to make music with people, but I had nobody to actually collaborate with at that kind of age. And when I got there, I was totally blown away. And I think that especially in that kind of age, 15, if you get the opportunity to collaborate at a high level, that creates a really, really nice base for the future. Like the younger you start to do it professionally, the more solid your base is. And relationships until today, as I told you, like a lot of musicians from that high school around my ages have moved to New York, and we're a pretty big community here, and it just feels great. And in terms of the actual experience there, there were rough sides to it, I guess. As you know, teenagers are teenagers, so there was a lot of competitiveness over there, and you know, a lot of you know, you will compare yourself to others, and everybody will kind of gossip and talk about who got this gig or that, whatever you get at that age. Like people would always kind of you know, trying to how should I phrase it?
Bring you down?
I wouldn't say bring you down, but let's say that high school created a competitive environment in which if you weren't very strong at what you do, you could have felt a lot of like insecurity. Yeah. It wasn't a very nurturing or like accepting per se, like be whatever you are at what level you are, and you will find your place. Like people who weren't very strong at what they do often felt kind of insecure. Yeah. And on the other hand, that kind of environment pushes you to be the best version of yourself you can be. it's just it's a relatively young age. So if you're not solid with who you are and with your just your security in like what you need or your own form of art, then you can feel intimidated. But with that said, I think this high school is just really, really amazing because it connects great minds and great talented people. And it's not always hostile and that competitive. I mean, I just enjoyed it so much. And I could say that since I was good at what I'm doing, my high school experience was great. I grew to understand that not everybody's experience in that high school was as great as my experience. But what's cool about this high school is that basically you have 6 majors. You have like jazz music, classical music, drama, visual art, dance, and cinema. And the cool thing about it is that when you study the regular curriculum that has nothing to do with the art, the classes are mixed. So you're friends with all sorts of artists. And like when you study math or I don't know, literature, the classes are mixed. And then when the time to go to art class, then you're kind of you study with your major peers that are the same age as yours. So it's pretty cool that you get mixed up with all artists, and as opposed to other high schools that I know in Israel that have arts majors, that if you're in jazz major, you also you study math and literature with the same class. Yeah. So we got mixed up. We got friends with everybody, and generally, like, the creativity in this high school is insane, and the level is really great, and like also the mindset is much more free and outside of the box compared to other high schools I know. Now, in that point, I started studying there in 2008, and at that point of time, there were maybe 2 or 3 other high schools in Israel with great music majors. But today, I mean, there are much more music majors throughout the country. So back then it was much more exclusive. Like, people would come from all over the country to that high school, which is kind of well known. And that created a really high level because, you know, they will kind of choose, like, what do you call when you choose with you choose each person after audition, you know, they'll audition people and will choose very specific people.
Selective.
Yeah, they were very selective. And these days, since there are much more music majors around the country, there are much less people coming to audition, so the level might have dropped a little bit. But the high school is still beautiful, and just I guess the mindset there is very artistic and as I said, outside of the box, and the teachers and the students are much closer than normal students and teachers, because teachers become mentors. And this is really, really great. And I'm really privileged to have been able to go to that high school.
At that time in your life, was New York already on your mind?
In a way.
If not, how did it come to your mind as a place, sort of a North Star, a place you were interested in potentially going to?
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess jazz in its base is American music, more specifically Black American music, but the way I perceived jazz at the time, before knowing about its history and its like you know what it meant politically back in the day where it started evolving, I knew already it's a type of an American music. And I knew that New York is kind of the mecca of jazz. And I knew that most of the people I used to listen to at the time, whether alive or not alive, were based or are based in New York. So the contemporary jazz I listened to in that time when I was high school, the musicians that I admired the most that are still some of my heroes that are living today, I knew that they're based in New York. So, naturally, I knew that I just want to be there and experience it. When I was 15, I didn't even know yet like how I'm gonna make it or when exactly, but it was kind of clear that I wanna move to the States, probably New York. It's also a thing, when you dream big, you move to the States. Like, especially music wise, if you're a pop artist, you move to LA, like the American dream. There is this thing throughout the world.
Yeah.
Like, it has to do with the fact that the base of those scenes are in the States. If like the whatever you call it, like the show industry or like pop industry or movies industry, like Hollywood, is in LA, or jazz is in New York. But if you want to dream big and make it, you gotta give it a try, especially when you're in your 20s and you don't think about family and the future and money and stuff. It was kind of clear that if I dream big, that's what I'm gonna do. And as I got closer to the moving date, the logistics or where I'm gonna live or where I'm gonna move to became clearer. But it was kind of common sense. Like I knew when I was 15, 16 already, like, okay, I think New York is where I aim when I finish with my commitments in Israel. And that's what I did. And also I had a lot of examples of like older musicians from Israel that have done this kind of thing where they studied in Israel and then they moved to study at New School or at Berkeley in Boston. It's like the path was already kind of ready, so many people have done it before. So I knew I'm not the first one. Like, I have also so many people, so many Israeli jazz musicians in New York that will be able to help me when I move out. Sense of community. So it was kind of clear that this is the right move. If I want to give jazz music a real try. But before I went to that high school, it wasn't necessarily New York that was in my thoughts. I guess when I started playing jazz, it was more clear that New York is a place to be.
How was your path formed? Did you go to grad school to come to New York? What was the way you were able to get into the country and begin your New York journey?
So let me start by saying I never went to college. So I never went to school, like never did any undergrad or like bachelor's degree.
Yeah.
And this was also a privilege, and I'll explain. So after high school, I did the military service.
Sure.
It's mandatory in Israel. So when I was 18, I joined the military for 3 years, which is kind of crazy if you think about those years of your life are just golden. And it's kind of normal. That's what we do. I was privileged enough to also make music. And
3 years is standard military service?
Yeah. So now it's a bit shorter. I think it's like 2 years, 8 months for boys and 2 years for girls.
Okay.
So I did that, and then I finished with it when I was about 22, and like a few months after I moved to New York. And when I moved, a lot of my friends moved to either Berkeley in Boston or New School in New York, and there are some programs in Israel of like schools in Israel that do kind of a mixed program. So undergrad is like 4 years usually, and so you do 2 years in Israel and then you do 2 years in either New York or Boston, depends on which path you choose. New School or Berkeley. But I kind of knew I started touring when I was pretty young. So when I was 18, I was still high school. I started playing with the saxophone player Eli the Jibri, and I remember I was still high school when he invited me for a European tour, and I remember it was kind of insane to me that he calls me to play this 2-week tour in Europe, and I was so excited, and I was lucky enough to start my professional career already while being in high school. So for me, I knew I just want to play music.
Sure.
And school, I think, is really great for many sorts of reasons. But I always knew that if I'm able to move to New York and start my professional career right away, that's what I want to do without going to school. Now, school is great because, first of all, it provides you with a visa if you're not American.
Yeah.
And also it helps with community, and you're part of a specific frame that allows you to meet people, interact with teachers. Kind of it eases off the landing in the United States if you don't know people.
Yeah.
And since I was lucky enough to tour and meet musicians before that, and I had the privilege of touring with some people that I knew that live in New York, I took the risk of like just moving here based on the little connections that I had and trying to use all my resources and time into just start from where I eventually want to be, which is playing and touring. After going to school, what people aim for, like, okay, I'll go to school, I'll meet people, and then I'll finish with school and I start playing in the scene. That's, I guess, the mindset of most of the people that move from Israel. I took the risk and I was like, I can potentially go to school, get a scholarship that will allow me to, help with the crazy, tuitions here.
Yeah.
But I remember thinking to myself, my eventual plan is to tour and to play with people in the scene. And I was thinking about, if this is my eventual goal, let me just try and move and do that.
Yeah.
And I was lucky to play with this great musician. His name is Omer Avital. He was one of the first Israelis to move here in the 90s. He's well known in the Israeli jazz scene, and he started a new band. And lucky enough, I just got to play with him right before I moved, and I knew he wants me to join his band when I moved to New York. So I knew I'm gonna have a specific gig that will help paying the bills and will be the basic income for me when I move to New York. And this guy also helped me a lot with finding an apartment and stuff. So I had kind of the starter that helped me with the move. And knowing I'm gonna have an apartment and a touring gig, even though we didn't tour a lot, like it wasn't a full-time job, but I knew this is enough to set the base for okay, I have a basic income, I have an apartment. Now let me just work out on relationships, play with other people, try to start my reputation and kind of show my face around and hey, I just moved, I would love to play. But without that, it's really hard to move with no plan. So I get why most of the people go to school, but I was lucky enough to have that, so I knew I might be able to make it without going to school. And I'll just add that specifically with jazz music, as opposed to other things you go to school to study, you can make it without school. I mean, if you want to be a lawyer or a doctor or any other thing, you have to get the degree. You have to study. But specifically with jazz, since jazz is not in its nature, it's not an academic type of music. And now there is jazz studies, which is great, but in its DNA, it's not an academic type of music. So you don't have to get a degree in order to play jazz. Maybe if you want eventually to teach at a university, they want to see a master's degree or something. But for what I wanted to do, which is practically playing and touring and play with the best musicians I can, a jazz degree is not a thing that will, on the paper, help you to get there. What will get you there is your reputation as a professional and the level you play and your relationships with musicians. That has nothing to do with school, unless those relationships have to do with people you met at school or teachers that you met and like you and then take you to play with them, which is another great thing a school can give you. But I guess that's why I knew school wasn't necessarily for me, because what I wanted eventually is not a thing that school can have provided me in a clear way.
Yeah.
So that's my path. I just moved right away.
I'd love to hear about your first 6 to 12 months here. You land here. I mean, you have some contacts, but outside of that, this is a new world, I would imagine, for you.
Definitely.
How did you survive? I'd love to hear about any reflections you have on what helped accelerate your momentum in New York. You had this gig, this opportunity that you knew was the base.
Yeah.
What else did you do? How did you make it work?
So another privilege of mine is that the thing is that I was able to tour before I moved to New York, and I lived with my parents at the time, so I was able to save enough money from touring. So I knew I'm moving to New York with the mindset of like, I'm not like desperate for, I know that worst things worst, I'm using my savings, or, I always have a family and a place to be. And there are so many great Israeli jazz musicians, and there is a great community here. So I knew that I'm not going to live in the streets. But in terms of like how I made it in the first 6 to 12 months, so as I said, having a gig, being a part of a band that I knew that can provide some work definitely helped the mindset, knowing I will be able to make some money. But, I got my lessons in terms of just going out every night, listening to the best drummers out there and just getting slapped in the face of like, if I thought, Israel is the jazz scene is pretty small. Once you get to a certain level and you play some certain gigs and you tour with Israeli like international musicians, you kind of feel like, okay, I have my name in the scene and I done this and done that, and you kind of feel good about yourself. And then you move to New York and you get your slap because the best musicians are here and nobody knows you, and you're like, first of all, you kind of lower your ego and understand that reputation and breaking into the community, it takes time.
What did you notice about the drummers here? Were they just their technical ability, their energy?
There is fire. There is just fire. The energy, and it's almost like a different accent. So I knew the language, or maybe at least I thought I knew. Like me today, like 10 years later, understand how much I didn't know about jazz back then. Like I knew some history, I of course checked out the history of jazz and old records and drummers, and I did my fair share of homework knowing about the jazz music, but there is so much to it. There can only so much you can know by listening to records and read about the history, but there is some stuff you just have to be present in New York or experience. Just listen to live concerts of musicians that played with the greats. Just like there is a certain accent, like an accent to a certain language. There is a certain accent to the jazz music in New York that I just could not experience in Israel. There are great musicians in the Israeli jazz scene, but when you move to New York and just you're going to the underground jazz clubs and hear like the passion and the fire and like the accent of music here, just the way it's being played, the atmosphere in the room, you just realize that it's different from anywhere else in the world. And I remember a few specific concerts that I was present. Like there is a great club that's called Smalls. Maybe you know.
Been there once, yeah. I love that place.
Smalls is great. It's been there out there since the 90s. The Village Vanguard. And a few others that I remember like going to watch concerts and like understanding like, oh, okay, New York is a different animal. Not only the greatness of music and greatness of just the energies in the room, just the fact that there's like the level is so much higher, and there are musicians in Israel that lived in New York and moved back, like really great musicians that left what do you call it, like they have their mark, left their mark here and then moved back to form their own families. But you can't bring the vibe of the scene back to Israel, even if you experienced the New York jazz scene, you're in your 40s or 50s and you played with jazz greats, and you moved back to Israel, you can influence and you can educate, but when you're here and you're in your 20s and you're just experiencing the scene for the first time, just the level here, the fire, the same as the high school I told you about, like the competitiveness, by the nature of the scene, there's so many great musicians. They're only, they're not enough gigs. So many people are basically competing. Like, I don't like the word competing because we're still artists and we support each other, but there are only a certain amount of gigs, and there are many more musicians than the amount of gigs. So naturally your standard of like how professional you are, it's just like, it goes much higher. You need to be professional and a great musician, and you got to show up on time. You got to learn the music before the gig. You got to dress up well, and you just you got to step up your game. Otherwise, there are so many other great musicians that will be they're on your tail. They will take the gig from you if you wouldn't be on the top of your game. So I remember realizing how professional people are here, how higher the level is, and just the music, as I said, just New York has a different energy, and I feel like it comes from the struggle, maybe the fact that everything is really expensive here, and the fact that the level is really high. People are really eager to prove themselves, and it just creates an environment that art is kind of pushed to the limits. And when you're comfortable and there's no competition, there's only, you're only getting pushed to a certain level, even maybe you're not pushed at all. But the less you're comfortable, the more you're looking for solutions, or you're working on getting better and trying to be at your best form. So that's what I felt when I moved here. I was like, okay, I can't be comfortable anymore. I gotta practice, I gotta be better, I gotta prove myself. Like there is, like, the sky is the limit, basically. And basically all the dreams I had in my mind felt much closer, and also much further away, because I realized how hard it is to get to where I want to be, or to play with the people I want to play with. It's just like I realized how good the people here, and how many of them there are. And so, like, being in the top percentage of drummers in town is like, there's so many great musicians. It's so hard to get there, because it means you need to be really great, and you need to be a professional, and you need to be a good person, easygoing. There are so many aspects you need to be on top of in order to get to where you want to be.
You need to be excellent.
Yes, on all aspects. Maybe in another scene where there aren't that many jazz musicians, you can make it as a great musician, but not being the most professional, because people would still want to play with you because you're a great musician, and they will take whatever price. They will pay the price if you're not necessarily 100% professional, or not the 100% most likable person. But in New York, it's just, you gotta be the best at everything. Otherwise, there are so many other options out there. If I'm a band leader and I hire musicians, I know that like, there's so many options for people that are great musicians. They'll show up in time, they'll learn the music, and they'll be great people. So why would I, sweat deal with a person that is not?
What did you do to get better? And I'm always curious to hear from people, especially who have been here for a long time. What worked to help create more opportunities for yourself?
That's a really good question. I'm when I look back at it, it's always seems to me like as I told you earlier, I always remind myself that I should be grateful, and I'm saying it because there is this thought, maybe in the maybe Western world or like capitalist world, that like you need to work hard and suffer, and then you enjoy kind of like the fruits your tree gives, or like you enjoy like you have to invest a lot, which is true.
Yeah.
But there's investment kind of tied up with this feeling of like suffering and working hard and paying your duties. And let me first say that I feel privileged because I did pay my duty, and there were situations that I wasn't 100% happy about. But my journey has been enjoyable, and it's been great, and it's been, full of great personal connections and great friendships and great musical collaborations. So first of all, I won't say anything like, yeah, you need to work hard and pay your duties and then maybe you'll get somewhere. I always look at it and I'm like, damn, maybe it shouldn't be that like negative in a way. So it's been mostly positive, and I can say in terms of like what have I done in order to progress, was probably take care of my mental health. That has a lot to do with just keeping the people you love around you. It's kind of cliche, but when you maintain good relationships and your mental health is you're in a good condition mentally, you're able to think more clearly about what you aim long term, and you're not kind of busy with surviving. And I would say there are duties to pay. There are nights that you go and you try to play at jam sessions and you're being humbled by better drummers or whatever. But my I guess my moral rules, even without, necessarily writing them on paper and, philosophically writing like an inner constitution or whatever, would be like, just be kind. I believe in karma. I'm not a Buddhist or whatever, but I truly believe that if you treat people nicely, people will treat you nicely. So I always try to be kind and try to be mindful and professional and understand that the game is much wider. It's not like if you kill it at the gig, you will get the gig. Like sometimes the way I got to gigs that I want to play sometimes came from different doors. I would look back at how I got this gig or that gig. I wouldn't have gotten it in the most obvious way. Like I reached out to the person I want to play, and I got the chance to I don't know, like I got the obvious email or audition or whatever. It's just kind of, sometimes you get opportunities from in different ways. And when your reputation is generally great person, professional, and killing it musically, it's just it's funny. I'm talking about it a lot with Shani and Evie, which were guests on your podcast, about you as a stock, like investing in your stock. Just invest in your stock, but not in the most obvious way of just go practice and work on your craft. Work on relationships, be kind to people, even like be generous with people. Generally, when you're generous, people want to be generous with you. Or towards you. So when your stock is, when you invest in your stock and your stock becomes what's the word for that? Maybe wanted or sought after, then the price of your stock goes up. And you can get to that point only if your reputation is good. It's very easy in this city to get your, people talk all the time, especially in the jazz scene. It's such a community that people talk all the time about other musicians. And sometimes there are waves of like, you know, people talk about you and then you get a bunch of gigs and you're getting really popular, and then the stock price goes down and and you're less busy. But in a way, you always want to be mindful of like, understand what the people talk, and your reputation is a thing.
Yeah.
It's like you have to think about it. And for me, I guess naturally, because of the person I am, I go with I just being myself, and myself means trying to be kind, not trying to be a hero or like compliment myself too much, but I guess naturally I'm just trying to be kind to people and to be empathetic. That's a thing as a sideman. If you're a band leader and you're doing your own business and you're dealing with booking or whatever, it's a different thing. But me as a drummer that is getting hired, there is a lot of empathy involved. You have to understand the guy who hires you, to kind of step in their shoes. And only when I start being a band leader myself a little bit and trying to perform my own music and hire other people, I realized like what it means to hire other people, and that gave me a lot of experience in how to be a better sideman. So if somebody hires me to a gig, I know what they will expect of me or what would make their life easier.
Yeah.
That way I can be a better professional. So I know what it means being late on their side. Like if I'm a sideman and they paid for a rehearsal space and I'm late to the rehearsal, I know they wasted money.
Yeah.
Like I'm wasting their money, for example. And these are things that not everybody think about. And I think is like, if you know both ends, like if you know yourself as a sideman, you know how it is being a band leader, and you're mindful of your band leaders as a sideman, there is much more chance people would, even if they don't consciously think about it, they will just know that they can trust you. There is a certain amount of trust.
Yeah.
So getting back to the initial question about like what I've done those years to kind of progress, I guess was trying to be mindful of other people and the people that hire me. A part of just being a good musician, this is kind of the obvious thing. Go practice, work on your craft, and come ready to the gig and be ready playing the music of other people. It's just there are a lot of like humane and personal layers into this type of progress. So this is what I would like to kind of highlight, a part of the musical part, just like being a good person and professional and thinking about the people who hire you for doing your job. It's a big thing. When they don't have to stress out about you, when they don't have to worry about you, they know you're going to show up and you're going to kill the gig. That's how your reputation starts, growing. And then people, as I said, people talk in the scene like, oh, I've heard about this great musician. What do you think about him? I need a drummer for whatever, for a gig. And then when people hear constantly from other people, I hired him. He's a great musician. He's professional. Like when people hear a lot of positive things about a certain person, then this stock becomes growing, and then you become more popular, and your stock goes up. That's basically what it is.
Earned trust.
Exactly, especially in a community, like a communal scene like jazz. Maybe when you're dealing with like more of like a corporate job, or if you're getting hired as a doctor to a certain hospital, or maybe you're working in something that requires a job interview and you're showing your resume and your interview is like your shot or your audition, it's different, because then you come with a paper that shows whatever you've done. But jazz is such a community, and you're getting hired based on your reputation, not only showing what you've done. And so your reputation is your audition in a way. And this is what I try to be mindful of, because it's way more. It's way wider than just going to a job interview. That's what I would say.
Very well said. And I think that's how healthy systems and hierarchies work, is people who get the opportunities have earned that. It's not just given to them.
Yeah.
You said earlier in the conversation that there are certain people who are your heroes, if I remember hearing you correctly, who are still alive and still performing. Who are those people? I don't know if any of them are in New York, but if somebody comes across this and they're really interested in the work that you do and the music you create, where would you point them to go listen to some world-class artists?
So, I mean, I had many dreams of playing with people that some of them have died recently. Maybe you would know the names like Chick Corea or Wayne Shorter. These are like people that are the pillars of jazz music and, complete legends. There is Herbie Hancock, for example, that is still alive. So those type of people that are giants and are in their 80s, I guess it's everybody's dream to collaborate and be able to make music with them. Like people who kind of are the founders of this music and played with the greatest musicians of jazz music. But these are more like dreams of dreams that are not that practical. Maybe one day. There are people that are a bit younger but still older than me. Let me think. I would also be happy to share that I actually this month I'm making one of those dreams come true. There is a musician that I've been a big fan of since high school. His name is Kurt Rosenwinkel, and I got to play with him last week for the first time.
So cool.
Yeah, I've been checking out his music for many, many, many years, and he's been one of the people who influenced on me as a composer and as a musician. One of the most influential people on me, and we're gonna play at the Village Vanguard at the end of this month.
Fuck yeah, man!
Which is, it's been a real dream come true. I'm like, it's kind of. I would have never imagined. I moved back to New York a year and a half ago. I would have never imagined this being this happening so quickly, because it's both Village Vanguard. It's been a dream of mine to play at for a long time, and with this guy Kurt Rosenwinkel, it's just I'm kind of like not 100% digesting it yet, just because it's awesome. He's one of them. Let me think about other people. There is Brad Meldau, if you've heard this name. He's a great, amazing piano player around the same generation of Kurt. It'll be a dream come true to play with him. It's kind of hard to name a few, because this generation has produced so many great musicians that it would be kind of an injustice to name only one or two. I have many great musicians of that generation, so I would have loved to play with. And also, it could have been great to kind of open up to play other stuff. I mean, I'm a jazz musician mainly, but, who doesn't want to play with Stevie Wonder or whatever? It's like, I would have loved to play with maybe some pop artists and like explore that as well. And it's hard to point at musicians. It would be easier to point at clubs. If somebody wanted to come to New York and check out the best music, there are just specific spots I would point them towards, like Smalls or Mesro or Ornithology, which is a great new spot in Brooklyn. And Village Vanguard is the spot. There is Smoke, there is Blue Note, it's generally, the level is so high here, is that if you're like a tourist and you're coming into New York and just or even live here but don't know that much jazz, most of the places would have like way above average jazz if you compare it to any other place in the world. Like jazz here is such high level. So there's just so much.
I mean, dude, so much in your story is about risk-taking, compound interest, just having a long view
Yeah.
of earning a reputation, earning trust, and believing that you used the word karma earlier, that would eventually potentially beget you more opportunities.
Yeah.
Have you found that New York has provided to you, both professionally and financially, a life that you find at least satisfying or maybe even comfortable, that this city has given back what you've tried to give to it?
It's still work in progress. I'm not quite where I want to be, like, eventually, but I can say again that I'm privileged to do what I do, and I'm not, like, I would say I'm not in a survival mode anymore, which is a thing in New York.
Oh
you
my
know,
God, yeah.
The survival in New York, like, what the amount of money you would consider as survival in New York would be living great in most places in the world. Because I've heard that if you make $50,000 a year, which in New York is considered low, you're in the top 2% in the world. So if you make above 70 grand a year, you're in the top 1% in the world, which in New York is still considered low.
Yeah.
So it just puts you in this in the spectrum, just in the proportions of, like, you know, even if I toured all throughout the year with great musicians, I wouldn't be rich in New York. But I came to peace with the thought of, like, I'm not gonna be rich from music, and I'm totally cool with that as long as I have whatever I need and I do the music that I'm most passionate about. And I think looking at it in a wider way, having, like, passion and gratefulness in life while not struggling is where I want to be. Of course, I want to be rich. I want to make as much money as I can. And maybe there are things you can do to think about the future, if it's investing or thinking long term, how you can help yourself when you're having a family or older. But I came to peace with the thought that I'm not gonna be a billionaire, you know, because for me, life is about experiencing it the best way possible. If you're like investing now, but you're suffering and you're thinking about your 50s, when I'll be 50, I'll be a millionaire, a billionaire, and then I could enjoy, as opposed to living good now. I'm not going to be rich, but I'm enjoying the journey.
Yeah.
This is what I'm aiming for. Hopefully I'll have enough money to not, the goal is not to be committed to work when I'm older, so I can choose what work I want to do and have enough money to kind of live without having to tour when I'm 60 or 70 and still fly out and work hard. But generally, if I can live in a good quality of life without being rich, but still do what I love, this is being rich for me, because the balance is perfect. Of like just being happy and having whatever you need material wise. This is like the balance is what I'm aiming for.
Yeah, well put.
Yeah.
And I think you at least partially answered the last question I always ask guests, which is about how they think about the word success. You know, and again, I think you just put this very well, but when you think about the word success as it applies to your life and your career and your future, how do you think about that word? What does that word mean to you?
Success, first thing, that comes into mind, I guess, is success in terms of materialism or followers or, like business-wise, how many people are your fans and how much money you make. But for me, success is that too, because for sure, like the more successful you are, obviously the more maybe you can charge for the work you do and the more appreciation you get. But for me, I guess the word appreciation is the thing. Like the amount of people you really touch and the amount of people that can talk about you and say this person has been influential on me or has changed the way I hear music, or whether if it's a musician that is influenced technically on a certain instrument, or a person that just knows my craft and it has changed them in any specific way, or just loves what I do and appreciates what I do. And the money and the followers and whatever, it's just that's just an outcome of your success. But I guess like in the DNA of success, that means that that people care about you, not in a like in a self-centered way, in a way that just people care about. Maybe I'll phrase it as people care about what you do and people love what you do, and you manage to give people joy and that you move them. That's for me what success is, I guess. And of course I would love to be rich as well. I would love to be in a situation where both of them come together. And I guess that's kind of the nature of it. The more appreciation you get, the higher profile the gigs you do, the more money you get, and the more people that come to see you, then the more budget you get.
Yeah,
it's natural. But we do art. In the first reason we do it is because we are passionate about it, and we try to move people, and we try to take people throughout the journey we are going through. So I would say this is the closest definition to the world, to the word as I can put it, or maybe a different part of the world. Of course, the materialistic part is just another part of it. But how much you touch people is, I think, this has a lot to do with success.
Yeah. Thank you, bro. Love this.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me.